Alright, let's talk a little bit about the motherboard BIOS now. Now the motherboard BIOS provides three critical functions. You have the system BIOS, the startup BIOS, and the setup BIOS. Now the system BIOS contains those instructions for running the various hardware devices before an operating system is installed. So that will run prior to your operating system actually being addressed in the computer. Now we have the startup BIOS, and this starts the computer and finds a boot device that contains an operating system. Once it finds that operating system, then it'll turn the startup process over to the operating system. Then we have the setup BIOS, which is used to change the motherboard settings. As you can see here on this screen that I'm being presented to you now, you can use it to enable or disable devices on the motherboard, change data and time, or select the order of boot devices for starting BIOS search, which we kind of looked at last week. Now, if you're going to install your Windows operating system, you'll need to determine what type of media you're going to use to boot your computer to load that operating system. So you can use various functions, such as if you don't have a DVD that came with your computer, which that's kind of being phased out now, but you might need to download Windows 7 from the Microsoft website, and this will only work if you already have a activated operating system to be able to do the upgrade. If you've downloaded this information, you can then put that onto or whatever site you got yours from. You know, if you're with an educational institution, you might have like availability through DreamSpark. And once you get the ISO from the site, you can then mount that onto a DVD. If you have that, you can then use an external DVD drive if your computer does not have a DVD drive. So you can use one of the old external ones. They're a lot slimmer now, so they're a lot lighter, and the price has gone down on those as well. But once you have your ISO, you could also copy those files onto a USB flash drive. So you could mount the files from your ISO to a folder and then put those on your clean USB drive. And we'll probably have a lesson later on how to set that up as well. If you have a DVD drive on another computer, you can share the DVD drive and install from there. And so hopefully you have those options available. You have many options, so you can figure out which one is best for you. And once you figure out which method you're going to be using, then you'll go into your BIOS and then change your boot priority list so you know which device you want it to move from. If you're going to be using a disk drive, you might such as a CD or DVD, then you could change that and move that up in your boot order to the top, so that when your computer first turns on, the BIOS looks to that hardware first. If you're doing a USB drive, change your boot order to that. Now, based on the manufacturer, as we discussed before, there's different keys that will allow you into the BIOS setup based on the manufacturer. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about virtual machines. You've probably heard virtual machines out there. The term's been used for quite a while now, but some of the popular ones for these are Virtual PC. You can get this from Microsoft. VirtualBox, this too is free from Oracle, and VMware Player or VMware by VMware Incorporated. Now, virtual machines are just that. They are a kind of a pseudo computer that is running on your actual computer. So you can create another simulated computer inside your computer using the hardware that you have available. Now, when you set up these virtual machines to use so much RAM or so much space or whatever, just know that when you're running those, that is using the actual resources that you have on your computer. So if you're flipping back and forth, your computer that you are mainly using is going to probably run a little bit slower depending on what you have running on your virtual machine, because it is going to take, let's say you have 4 gig of RAM and you dedicate 2 gig towards your virtual machine and you're running a virtual machine, then that means you are going to have less resources available to you on your main computer there. But they're very fun to play around with. One of the main reasons is that you might want to use these are to test other operating systems or software. one of the reasons that we mainly use it is for training users or training our end users. If we have some old operating systems we run on and a different service pack or whatever comes out for some hardware, we want to make sure that it's going to run, and if it doesn't, then we're capturing it in a virtual environment, so it's not going to hurt our other computers that our software is running on, so we know whether or not to allow a upgrade to happen or not. So you can, one of the other great things is if you're doing some training documentation, you can capture your screenshots real easily on a virtual machine, such as the boot process for like Windows 7 or Windows 10. You can capture these very easily because your main computer can take the screenshots of your virtual machine that's running on your desktop, so you can view both and do those necessary screenshots or video capture. The other one I want to talk about is Windows XP mode. Now, using Windows XP mode, you can run programs that were designed for Windows XP, which is now sunset and no longer supported. But any programs that were designed for XP, but you can run those on Windows 7 as long as you're running it in XP mode. So it treats the running of that application that you're wanting to do as if you were running it on a legacy Windows XP machine. And the only versions or editions of Microsoft Windows that you can run this on are Windows 7 Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate editions. Windows XP mode is no longer supported, so it's not supported on Windows 8 machines now. And the way that XP mode works, it kind of works in two ways, both as a virtual operating system and as a way to open programs within Microsoft Windows 7. Now it runs in a separate window on the Windows 7 desktop, much like a program, except it's fully functional, fully licensed version of Windows XP in Windows XP mode. And you can access your physical computer CD, DVD drive, install programs, save your files, and perform other tasks as if you were running a computer that was running the Windows XP operating system. So now that you know some about the different installations, let's go ahead and take a look at choosing that type of installation. Are you going to use an in-place upgrade, a clean install, or a dual boot? If you have a hard drive and it's brand new, obviously it doesn't have an operating system on it, so you're going to perform a clean install. There's nothing to upgrade, therefore you can't perform an upgrade. If an operating system is already installed, you have three options. You can do a clean install, which overwrites everything on the operating system that's already there, as well as the applications. Now, this is great because you can get a fresh start in case your operating systems may be corrupted or running a little slow, and having a clean install should just take care of everything and you have that fresh start. Now, you can do an in-place upgrade, and this is a Windows installation is launched from your desktop with the disk in or whichever media you're using, and you keep your user settings and the applications, so you don't have to reinstall all of those applications. You don't have to worry about getting the keys again or just taking the time to do those and then start doing your updates. You can also perform what's called a dual boot. You can install Windows in a second partition. We talked about partitions last week, but you can, in a second or third partition, you need at least two partitions, or install another hard drive to put your operating system on. So you could look up how to do a dual boot, but essentially it's let's just say you're using one hard drive and you're not using up all the space, you have lots of room. So you can then shrink the size of that volume and create another partition from that. So once you do that, you've got some space available. You go to boot up your computer, change your boot order, you select the media that you want to install. Now you can then install that operating system. It's going to ask you where, hopefully you choose customize when you do your install. You see that you have different partitions available. You select the new one that you created and it will install it on that available partition. Then when it's completed and you boot up, you'll be asked which operating system you want to install from. And we'll go more into this later on. Now when you want to do an upgrade, you can't just go from like Vista Home Basic all the way up to Windows 7 Professional. So there are different in-place upgrade paths you need to make sure that you pay attention to. Here is an in-place upgrade path you can look at here. so you can kind of get a feel for what you can upgrade to. This is only including Vista and Windows 7. We've not yet moved into doing those paths for Windows 10, but as I said, right now Microsoft is allowing you to do those upgrades for free as we speak. That will be changed soon here, probably by the end of 2015. Here's some other tips to keep in mind when you're doing your installation. 64-bit to 64-bit, 32-bit to 32-bit, or you can install a 64-bit version over a 32-bit version, but you must do this as a clean install. If you do have a computer with Windows Vista, make sure that to do that upgrade you have at least Service Pack 1, because it won't just go from the clean install of Windows Vista prior to Vista Service Pack 1. I'll go back and talk a little bit now about partitioning. Now, the size of the partition matters. Each partition formatted with the file system and assigned a drive letter. So once you make that partition live and now it's become a volume, it's because you've assigned it a drive letter. You have a file format on it, or file system format, and now it's assigned a letter so that the operating system can see that partition, and that's now called a volume. Now, it's up to you whether you decide how much of the available space to use. If you want to do multiple operating systems, make sure that if you're just testing, you don't need a whole lot. Just make sure you meet the minimum requirements plus some, so that you have updates, or if you want to run some programs on there, you have enough room. Some people like to have a separate volume on their main hard drive just for saving their files, or they may have multiple partitions, multiple volumes. So if you want one volume just for your pictures, another volume for videos, another volume for music, then make sure you are setting that up correctly. And that's just personal preference. If you want to have a dual boot system, you may partition the size, as I said earlier. Let's say you're going to do a Windows 8.1 partition, then you are going to set up that volume to, minimum 20 gig, but more than likely you're going to go up to like 30, 35, 40 gig, so that you can run that efficiently and have room to put files on or run applications on. Okay, I want to leave you with this note that it's up to your preference on partitioning your hard drive. Some believe that using an entire drive with a single Windows partition might not be the ideal method for the install because of the system reserve and backups and stuff like that. So it's completely up to you. As far as backups go, you need to determine your own method for backing up your files from your hard drive.